Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the national webinar on British literature through the ages. Respected dignitaries, participants, dear students, and all those who have joined us today for this national webinar on literature through the ages.
അഖിലേശ്വരനല്ലയോ സകല സ്തുതിയും അഖിലേശ്വരനല്ലയോ സകല സ്തുതിയും പരമകാരുണ്യവാൻ കരുണാനിധി.
Thank you. Has yielded rich dividends in its literary arena as well. I restrict the description of the webinar and take the role to welcome the dignitaries inaugurated by an academician known for his UGC recognized literary journal.
And at the same time, it is also true that English literature was introduced in Britain as well as in India almost at the same time. Certain other students may say Wordsworth is my favorite author, and they have a feeling that Shakespeare and Wordsworth and T.S. Eliot and English literature, which consists of such great writers, is the best literature in the world, because they are a kind of a discourse which tried to propagate the idea that English is the best language, English literature is the best literature. In fact, this commonsensical understanding of literature was actually questioned by many critics from Britain itself, like Terry Gilton. In his famous book, Literary Theory, you might have read, I think the MA students have to study that, The Rise of English. So there he speaks about how English literature was introduced in many parts of the world and how it was being used by the government, by the colonial authority at that time. So we first of all, what we have to understand is that English literature studies came to India not just in the form of literature studies. It was part of the colonial agenda. It was part of the colonial plan to control and to establish hegemony over the colonized. And that they have successfully implemented. And we have to first of all question the very authority of English literature before studying English literature as such. Or along with our studies of English literature, we will also have to question the authority of English literature as one of the hegemonic discourses that controls our understanding. And I think that should be part of our syllabus also. And so another thing that we have to think about is that English literature, beginning from 14th century to 20th century, is being taught in our universities, colleges, etc. When I did my MA about 34 years before, in 83 to 85. At that time, I found that the syllabus was from Chaucer to the 20th century, up to the 20th century literature. And at that time, the literary criticism was only up to new criticism. So we had in our syllabus, the literary criticism begins from Aristotle and comes up to new criticism, F.R. Lewis. And that was the limit. But now we find that literary criticism has, or it has even changed its name, and it is now known as literary theory. And we study structuralism, post-structuralism, deconstruction, post-colonialism, postmodernism, all those things. So it has developed much. And along with that, we should also develop or transform our literary studies. So there are certain transformations. It is very clear. That is, one is that at that time, as an additional paper, we had American literature and Indian literature in English. Now we have African literature and Canadian literature, Australian literature, new literatures. So we have many other things that has been introduced. That is also true. So English literature has changed. Literary studies have changed. And another change that we find in the literary studies from the earlier period is that when I was a student, we used to have a collection of essays for the degree programs for all students. In those collections, we had authors like A.G. Gardner and several other British writers. A.G. Gardner was there, and Richard Steele was there. At certain occasions, Lytton Strachey was there. So most of the traditional British writers were introduced in the collection, but the only Indian author was either Mahatma Gandhi or Jawaharlal Nehru. Nehru and Gandhi were the only Indians represented in those anthologies. All others were of British origin. But now we find that if you take an anthology of English textbook, you will find a lot of Indian authors represented in it. Apart from Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, sometimes we may have Arundhati Roy or Shashi Tharoor or Amitabh Ghosh and many others. So that is another important change, because at that time it is believed that India.
So to break such concepts about English, because English literature was not considered important by the British in the 17th or even in the 18th century. The kind of feeling that that particular generation had towards English. They were enamored by that language, enamored by that culture. So they embraced that religion, interrogate the kind of English that is being pursued by us. So we should modify it, reform it, and redefine it.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking this time. And I know you have a very busy schedule. Next, it's time for the keynote address. For that, I invite Dr. Rajeshwari Nair.
For this lecture, I propose to slightly reframe the literary history. I would like to give you a bird's eye view regarding writings from the early period to the modern period.
Jahangir sir, he's asking whether he can continue.
Sir, Rajesh sir, we will wind up the keynote for just 1 minute, and after that, two felicitations are there, and after the vote of thanks, the inaugural session will be over. And after that, we will go for a Untitled webinar series. After your presentation, 3 of our students are also presenting, sir.
Oh, very good. Anyway, let me I shall cut it short. So thank you very much. Really happy to wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Jahangir sir, is Sandhya ma'am in?
Anyway, I shall cut it short. So thank you very much. Really happy to.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. Rajesh, sir, your face is not clearly seen, sir. In that, if you could just adjust your camera.
Is it okay now?
Yes. Okay, sir. Okay, fine, sir. Femina, if you
Jahangir sir,
please
is
call.
Sandhya ma'am in?
Rajesh, your face is. If you could just call.
Jairaj sir. Jairaj sir.
Yes. Is it okay now?
Yes.
Okay, sir.
So Sandhya ma'am will be joining us shortly. Now it's time for felicitations. Now I welcome Dr. V. Jayaraju, HOD, Department of Commerce, and IQAC convener, Iqbal College, Peringamala, to deliver the felicitations. So welcome, sir.
Thank you, Pravina.
Will be joined.
Expected to present in the webinar. I hope this type of webinar will the quality assurance measures which are initiated in our college. I wish this webinar all success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
This type of webinar.
Sorry to interrupt. Sandhya madam's network has some kind of technical issue. She'll be joining right now. We shall wait for 1 minute. Please wait. She'll be joining right now.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, Sandhya madam has just joined.
The participants really apologize for technical problems. Now I welcome Dr. Sandhya Vidyadharan, member of the Studies, University of Kerala, for the felicitations. Ma'am, please. Thank you. Respected Principal, Major Dr. U. Abdul Kalam, Dr. P.P. Ajay Kumar, PVC, University of Kerala, Dr. Rajesh Nair, Assistant Professor, School of Letters, Dr. J.S. Jehangir, Head of the Department of English, Dr. B. Jayaraju, Mrs. Rani Vinita, dear teachers and students. I am proud to be a part of this dignified virtual dais. I think this webinar is something special. I say so because I have seen many departments organizing webinars on highbrow topics, on various literary theories, which I do definitely think are necessary. But this one, titled British Literature Through Ages, is more fundamental and essential for the learning of English literature. Literary and social history has always been a defining force in shaping artistic creativity. So, a clear historical perspective is essential for the proper and in-depth understanding of literature. I think you have gained that historical perspective from today's class. We know that these are tough times, a time when we have been challenged to the core. This is also a period of emotional lockdown, and it will definitely shape the post-COVID literature. The global pandemic will shape the literature of the future. So, today's webinar topic has great contemporary relevance too. I think future writers will celebrate with a renewed vigor the value of freedom, environmentalism, minimalism, and also they will treat themes of isolation, separation, mortality. These thoughts have already started appearing in contemporary writings from all over the world as the entire world is affected by the pandemic. Again, it is during such testing times that human potential seizes chances of innovative and experimental ways to connect with each other. I congratulate the Department of English, Iqbal College, for organizing this webinar. And also, I make use of this opportunity to congratulate the entire teaching community from primary level onwards for providing virtual classrooms and for organizing webinars to keep going the intellectual vibrancy of our educational institutions. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. Thank you, Antaman. Thank you so much for your time. Next, I invite Ms. Rani Vineta, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to deliver the vote of thanks. Rani.
Thank you, Femina. Good morning to one and all gathered here, respected chief guests, dignitaries, faculty members, and dear participants.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandhya ma'am, for those inspiring words of felicitation.
Jananda sir, shall I continue?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Good morning to one and all gathered here, respected chief guests, dignitaries, faculty members, and dear participants. I really feel privileged to get this opportunity of proposing a vote of thanks in this webinar. Before that, I would like to wish all the participants a happy and prosperous new year. Now, resorting to my duty, which is to express gratitude to all those personalities who have helped in the conduct of this webinar. First, I would like to express my sincere gratitude and indebtedness to our Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. P.P. Ajay Kumar, Pro Vice Chancellor, University of Kerala, for accepting our invitation in spite of his busy schedule and gracing this webinar with his esteemed presence. So, on behalf of Iqbal College and the Department of English, I thank you, sir. Next, I would like to convey my sincere gratitude to our dear principal, Major Dr. U. Abdul Kalam. Our principal has always been a supportive force for all the academic and non-academic endeavors of this institution. So on behalf of the Department of English and the entire fraternity of Iqbal College, I express my sincere gratitude to you. Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to convey our heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished academician, Dr. Rajesh Nair, Assistant Professor, School of Letters, Mahatma, for accepting our invitation and he will be engaging a session on British literature, and I believe that it will be a very informative and useful session for the students. And as intended, we have students as our audience, and I believe that we all are looking forward to hear from you, sir. So, as a part of the procedure, I express my sincere gratitude to you, sir, for being a part of this webinar. Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to thank our two felicitators, Dr. Sandhya C. Vidyadhare, Member of Board of Studies, University of Kerala, and Dr. Jairaj, Convener of IQAC and Head of the PG Department of Commerce, Iqbal College, for being a part of this webinar and making it a good program. So on behalf of the Department of English and the entire Iqbal College, I extend my sincere gratitude to both of you. Thank you. Behind every successful program organized by our department lies the manifold attempts of our head of the department. So, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and appreciate the dedication of Department of English, Iqbal College, for his support and guidance for the smooth conduct of this webinar. I would also like to thank all my colleagues of both of the Department of English and other departments for their cooperation and support. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants for being a part of this webinar. Thank you all, and once again, I wish you all a happy new year.
Thank you, Rani. Thank you, Rani Vineta, for delivering the vote of thanks. And I thank all the others who have been part of this inaugural function. Now, our formal function is over. Let's move on with our keynote speaker. He'll be elaborating on this topic, British literature through the ages. Over to you, Rajesh, sir.
Anyway, I hope I am audible. The topic, British literature.
Yes, sir.
British literature through the ages. So when I sit here, I really wonder how we can condense everything within 1 hour or so, because I have to take you to the 20th century from the early period, right? However, I would like to give framework, which is very, very important. I shall try my level best to condense things which I propose to tell you. But I have no time to elaborate the points. You bear with me. So the first important thing which we have to do is how to study English literature. So there are so many books on English literature. This is one book, History of English literature.
Sir, I think that your camera is to be adjusted, sir, so that the books that you know will also be visible, sir. Yes.
What is it now? Okay.
It's okay, sir. If you show the book, that would be. Yes, sir. Yeah, it's not clear. Yes.
This is a book. Very good. So now so many books on the history of literature by writers such as Reaffirm and Coherent, etc. So if you look at all these books, one thing you can notice is so the books are divided into different chapters based on different ages. For example, the age of Chaucer, age of Elizabeth, based on age of Shakespeare, Elizabethan age, and Romantic period, etc. So we need to rethink this conventional approach. So that's the first important goal which I have to tell you. So how we can think differently? So I propose that we have to divide British literature roughly into 3 sections, 3 categories or segments: drama, poetry, and prose or fiction. Drama, poetry, prose or fiction. So if you divide British literature into period, starting from the Old English period to 20th century contemporary period, if you divide British literature into 3 broad categories, that would help us more because, for example, if you take poetry at a time, British poetry at a time, you can read about Chaucer, then you can move on to Elizabethan poetry, Elizabethan sonneteers, Elizabethan lyricists. Then, in the Restoration period or after that, 18th century, till the contemporary period. And, the contemporary poets, British poets, such as Simon Armitage. So Simon Armitage is the present poet laureate. So you will get a connection. You will get a connection from the early period to the contemporary period. So I strongly recommend you to study one form at a time. Take poetry, you start from the early period, then you continue without mixing forms. If you study Chaucer, then you move on to some other form, for example, drama, medieval drama. So you'll be slightly confused. So the point is, if you take one form at a time and complete it from the beginning to the latest period, it will help you to connect poets or dramatists or prose writers. So that's the strategy which I would like to propose in this webinar, which is slightly unconventional, but I have found it very, very useful. Secondly, it will always be very useful if you quickly go through the different social events in British history. So a knowledge of British history will help because social history is very important, and you can connect the social history with the literary history and place some particular authors. If you know the social context, for example, social context of Elizabethan period, then before studying Shakespeare, if you know the social context, It will help you to understand Shakespeare as a writer better. Obviously, there are new approaches to new criticism, but social context is very important. So, a knowledge of social history, and you place social literary works upon the social context. That will help you a lot. So, the first important thing which you have to think about is to have a quick review of social history. For instance, I shall quickly go through some of the important social events, starting from the early period, how the Celtic people came to England, Anglo-Saxon settlement, invasion of Christianity, Norman conquest, 1066, very, very important. Then the assassination, the murder of Thomas Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury, King John and Magna Carta, 1250. 100 Years War, how 100 Years War had an impact on Chaucer, for example. You can connect a particular author with the context. 100 Years War. The Black Death, very, very important, followed by Peasants' Revolt. The War of the Roses, followed the Constantinople, very, very important for us to know about incidents. Then Queen Elizabeth I became the ruler in 1558. Francis Drake of the Elizabethan pirates. Then defeated the Spanish Armada, very, very important. Then the foundation of East India Company. The beginning of Stuart dynasty in 1602. You know what happened after that, the Civil War, etc., etc. Crossing of D.A. James in 1642. Execution of Charles I and abolition of monarchy. That's also very important. In 1660, Restoration Age. In 1688, Glorious Revolution. In 1689, Bill of Rights. Then unification of England and Scotland in 1707. So Great Britain having a reality. 1707. Industrial Revolution of 1770s. Queen Victoria became the ruler in 1837. First World War 1914. Irish Revolution, very important to understand. For example, W.B. Yeats. If you have to study the poem is 16, it will always be very, very useful to study. To read about Irish Revolution. 1928, women getting voting rights. And the propagation of a Roma console by the rebels. Along with that, it was very important. In 1928, Great Economic Depression. Second World War 1939. The end of the Second World War 1945, and basically what happened. Existential philosophy became very, very important, and how the best example, Samuel Beckett's Dating for Both. Absurd absurdism. 1953, Queen Elizabeth II. So 1979, Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister. 2003, Iraq War. Okay, so my point is that a knowledge of may not be a detailed knowledge, but some knowledge of the social history will help us to understand literature better, right? So connecting social history with literary history is very important, and how to move on with the literary history by dividing it into three forms. I'm going to practice what I'm telling you. Okay. Then take one form at a time and complete it from beginning to end. Okay. And you can, for example, if you take poetry at a time, you can debate poetry into different schools, age of Shakespeare, sorry, not Shakespeare, sonnet, Elizabethan sonnet, then neoclassical poets, romantic poets, Victorian poetry, then the different schools, Majest school, Irish poetry, different movements, literary movements are there within the form poetry. The same is the case with drama and fiction. So, and it is also important. It's also important to make a list of key concepts based on different forms. For example, if you take poetry at a time, it is very important for us to know the definition of important how elements are exposed. For example, in the case of poetry, we have to familiarize ourselves with different forms like lyrics, odes, ballads, etc. And there are different technical terms associated with poetry. When you study poetry appreciation, you have to know about some concepts, some technical terms such as session, meter, following with one syllable, rhyme, etc. Of course, meters. You should know what is a dramatic one. So different concepts are there. So if you take a drama at a time, then there are different concepts associated with VSCs, tragedy, tragic comedy, etc. Same is the case with the pop also. So concepts, and it's always better to depend more than one book. Because not a single book on literary history is complete. So completeness is the fantasy, and every book has got some limitation. So it's always better to depend on more than one book, and it's very important for us to make a list of books. We can refer when you study the areas of literature, you can make use of it. But Albert's book, like you saw, is the reaffirms. So, the problem with each and every book is that in a particular book, one age will be given prominence. For example, if you take Edward Albert's book, in that book you get a very good description of bar poetry, early traditional British literature. If you take Iqbal's book, that book gives a beautiful description of restoration literature. So Hafsal's book is very, very useful. So make use of different literary histories, and you can prepare a plan to move forward, and you have to familiarize with the important canonical authors, starting from Joseph to Agatha. So I know one of the before I start, I was just introducing a framework. So lecture notes. Lecture notes have already been sent to the community, and the participants will get the lecture notes so that you need not write each and every point. So my lecture will be structured in to give you a website. So I will give you points. So when you think about drama, you have to go back to the ancient Greece, where place where the primordial form of drama it was performed. And it was performed on the occasion of the festival of Dionysius. And you know the role of chorus, in Greek. The mask was very, very important at the time also. So the chorus, the ethics was the center of civilization. So from Greek, when we study drama, we have to go back to ancient Greece and know some basic details. It will always be useful if you compare Greek drama with Indian drama, science, etc. Okay. Secondly, so we have to jump to medieval period. So medieval, when we take medieval drama, there are essentially three forms: miracle or mystery, dealing with the biblical stories. Second, take was morality, is dealing with human vices and virtues, and we have every man as the best example. And the third variety was interludes, which was performed in between the plays. short performances in between, just like an opera, musical performance in between plays. Right? So medieval drama, the play forms in different ways. Then 15th century, luckily for us, it was a barren period as far as English literature was concerned. So not much drama. Remember the year 1450, the fall of Constantinople, and eventually what happened? Renaissance. There's a cultural renaissance. So different scholars, they escape to different parts of Europe. And they settled down, and they could see the diffusion of knowledge in Europe at that time. And thanks to Renaissance, Seneca's, the Roman playwright Seneca's plays were translated, and the plays were made available in England. And Senecan revenge tragedy influenced the university bits. That's connecting link. So 16th century, Seneca influenced the university bits. Came before Shakespeare. They were pre-Shakespearean writings. They were copies, translators. Universities were Christopher Marlowe and Thomas Gill. So they were obviously influenced by Seneca. The second, tragedy of blood, tragedy of horror. So Seneca to universities. Then we have to connect with Shakespeare. So how Shakespeare was influenced by universities, particularly Christopher Marlowe and Thomas Gill. And we study Shakespeare. Again, it is always better for us to divide his plays into four categories: one, tragedies; two, comedies; three, histories; and four, romances. So I don't have any time to elaborate much. I hope you got the point. Tragedies, comedies, histories, and romances. And know the features of his tragedies, features of his comedies. Shakespeare has not heroes but only heroines. A very important statement in connection with the comedies. So tragedies, the situation is like this. Histories, romances, there is an example. Okay. So we are about the features of romances. Then after Shakespeare, when we come to 17th century, early 17th century, we had writers such as Ben Jonson, Comedy of Humors. Ben Jonson was a friend and the brother of Shakespeare, and Jonson's Comedy of Humors. Jonson and George Chapman, so they popularized, particularly Ben Jonson, through his plays such as Every Man in His Humour. So Ben Jonson popularized Comedy of Humors based on medieval theory of humors. After that, Jacobian drama, early period of 17th century, the beginning of the Stuart dynasty, when James I was the king of England. Jacobian drama, John Webster, very, very important. The white. So that's very, very important. And at that time, interestingly, Shakespeare stopped writing plays during 13, after 1660. At that time, he was not very active towards the end of his life. He was taking rest. So John Webster was the prominent writer of this whole Jacobian drama. There were other writers such as Cyril Turner, Beaumont Fletcher, etc. Right. So after that, I request you to visualize the period from 1700. From 1600 onwards. So the early period Jacobian drama. Then the Civil War broke out, and theatres were closed. In 1640, theatres were closed in 1640. Not much literature we could see in that period. There were no school seats. There were no school seats for writers. So it was a tumultuous period. It was a very tough period in British history. In 1660, in 1660, we find the revival of drama. 1660 period. That's the year of restoration. When Charles II, he was brought to England from France. He had been an exile in France. So when Charles II, he was brought to England, and he became the king of England. The monarchy was restored in 1660, and he declared the opening of theatres. And interestingly, for the first time, we come across female actors on English stage. Restoration period. And before that, Dr. Elizabethan Theater imposed the roles of women, and that's why we could see so many mistaken identities. Portia, this case is partners, for example. So women started appearing on Elizabethan stage, on English stage in 1660. But they got voting right only in the second decade of the century. That's very interesting. So, restoration drama, 1660 to 1700. So, if you take 40 years, you can divide the restoration drama into two broad categories. Number one, restoration comedy, also called comedy of mirages, and we have the best example, Wave the World by William Congreve. And I'm not going to elaborate much about the features of comedy of mirages, there's no time. Secondly, the second broad division of restoration is restoration tragedy. Restoration tragedy, it has got three subdivisions. One is heroic tragedy. Heroic tragedy. And the best example is John Dryden's Conquest of Byron. John Dryden was a very important. Then secondly, blank verse tragedy. Again, the most important writer was John Dryden. Dryden is All for Love. And I'm sure that you know the connection of All for Love with the Shakespeare's Anti So, Dryden was the most important figure in two types of drama: heroic tragedy, tragedies in heroic nature, blank verse tragedy, tragedies in blank verse. And the third variety of restoration is she tragedy, she tragedy, because it was a peculiar kind of play, peculiar kind of drama which was based on female characters. Female characters were very, very important. So we have the examples: Nicholas Rowe, Thomas Ortway. Thomas Ortway is the orphan. Nicholas Rowe. Two important figures. That's good. And the next one, towards the end of that period, we have sentimental comedy. So the reason behind the emergence of sentimental comedy, it was a reaction against comedy of manners. Comedy of manners, they dealt with the upper class aristocratic life. So sentimental comedy touched upon the middle class life, and sentimental scenes were in. Coley Gibbons, Love's Last Sigh, and Nathaniel Lee, another important writer. That Steele, The Conscious Lovers, was also an example. It's also an example of sentimental comedy. And sentimental comedy, it was followed by anti-sentimental comedy. Again, a reaction against sentimental comedy. Sentimental comedy was a reaction against comedy. And as a reaction against sentimental comedy, we have anti-sentimental comedy by Sheridan, Oliver Goldsmith, etc. She stops to conquer Sheridan's rivals. Schools was there are so many examples. Right? So after that, we have till now we have reached 18th century, crossed 16th century and 17th century, and we have moved on to 18th century. In 18th century, in the early period of 18th century, we don't see much drama, but we can see drama as a form was slightly unimportant or less popular during that period, in the Romantic period as well as Victorian period. So, in the Romantic period, some Romantic writers such as Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Shelley, they all experimented They all started writing plays before writing poems. For example, Wordsworth wrote the board reads, which was not a success. Coleridge experimented with the play The Remorse. Shelley's The Change was a success. But you can see all these romantic writers, they focused more on poetry. So they would have realized that it was not their cup of tea. So they turned to poetry, including Byron, Lord Byron. So Byron wrote a play, Manfred, right? So romantic period, drama was there, but it was not very important. In the Victorian period, the situation was the same. So we can see the adaptations of some Shakespearean plays, and nothing noteworthy going out the Victorian period. But towards the second half of Victorian period, that is towards 1850s. In the 1850s, we can see the revival of drama. That's very important. Revival of drama, mainly the contribution of Henry Gibson. So Henry Gibson's A Doll's House. Remember, Gibson's play A Doll's House was first staged in 1879. It was staged in 1879. And he wrote so many important plays. So Gibson revived drama. And Gibson introduced realism in drama. And Gibson influenced so many writers later, including George Bernard. So no wonder Henry Gibson is one of the father of modern drama. But remember, Elizabethan age was the golden age of English drama. So after Henry Gibson, we can find the connection. So many English writers, English playwrights, they got influenced by Gibson, and we have problem plays. Problem plays were also known as drama of ideas, social drama or intellectual drama. And we have two important figures, George Bernard Shaw and John Galsworthy. And Galsworthy wrote on the question of law. He challenged the legal system. Shaw wrote on different social issues. The question of language in Pygmalion. One, the themes of love and war in Arms and the Men. This is Byron's profession. Prostitution, the theme of prostitution. So they dealt, all these writers, they dealt with all these writers in the sense, Shaw and Galsworthy, they dealt with burning social problems. But remember, they never gave solutions to social issues which were discussed. So they were not very didactic, but they were keen on introducing social issues. They were socially conscious and to the core. Then, 20th century, early 20th century, we have Celtic drama or Irish drama, and we have most important figure, James Synge, John Milton Synge, and Synge's Riders to the Sea. Everyone knows that. Playboy of the Western world, that's also very important. And remember, W. Yeats was also an important figure in Irish drama. Yeats. But he was more popular he became more popular as a poet. Irish drama, Celtic drama, then poetic drama. The school of poetic drama, headed by none other than T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot's Murder in the Cathedral, so many other plays such as Family Reunion. So poetic drama is very, very important. Then another important trend in and epic. So epic as a form became very, very important. Before that we had Beowulf in the medieval period. But epic as a form, modern form, became very, very important. And Edmund Spenser is the fairy tale. It came out in the 16th century. So sonnet, epic. Then comes the school, another school of poetry, metaphysical school. Leader was John Marvel. So we move on to 17th century. We have Cavalier poets or Caroline lyricists. Cavalier poets or Caroline lyricists. We have poets such as Thomas Carlyle, Richard Lovelace, John Suckling. And a small group of poets who lived in the court of Charles I. Earlier poets, they lived in the court of Charles the First. Then, in the towards the middle of 17th century, we have the great figure John Milton. So John Milton was an epic poet. John Milton was a poet, as a writer of pastoral elegies. So we have so many important writers, the poets. So John Milton was a leader, was a tall figure of that period. And coming to the end of 17th century, we have neoclassical poetry, John Dryden and Alexander Pope. Dryden's Alexander Pope's. Right of the block. So satire as a mode of writing poetry, the prominence given to heroic couplet. That's very, very important. After that, in the 18th century, in the 1720s and 30s, we have another school. In fact, after neoclassical poetry, we can find a shift from neoclassical poetry to romantic poetry. The shift happened over years. It did not happen quickly. It happened over years. So, as a reaction against neoclassical poetry, the rigidity, the so-called rigidity of neoclassical poetry, we can see romantic movement slowly gaining momentum. And in 1720s and 30s, we have writers, we have a separate school, transitional poetry. We have the most important writer, Thomas Gray, James Thomson, who wrote the Seasons, Thomas Percy, William Collins, William Cooper, George Crabbe, Robert Burns, William Blake. So, transitional poetry. That school marked a transition from neoclassical school to romantic school. So, transitional school of poetry was that school was very, very important and crucial. And within that transitional school, we can find a sub-school. If you can use that word, sub-school, a small stream within that transitional school. The school is called a churchyard or graveyard school of poetry. So churchyard or graveyard school poetry focusing on death, melancholy becoming a very important theme in poetry. The settings of the poems, they are usually in graveyards. And we have Thomas Gray's elegy written in a country churchyard, set in Stock August, for example. Then William Blake, before the official romantics such as Wordsworth, Coleridge, and others. So William Blake's contribution as a poet, source of innocence and source of experience. And William Blake was a mad poet. He was a poet as well as a painter. And I'm not going to give you more details because of this time. Tiger and Lamb, etc. So many important points. So coming to Romantic period, 1790s period, you know the context, French Revolution, 1789. So that's why we have to know. It's very important to know the social context, French Revolution, followed by the Romantic movement, Wordsworth, Shelley. They were all influenced by French Revolution. This was something that belonged to be alive. So, romantic poetry, the senior romantics, early romantics or senior romantics, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Shelley, then John Keats, Lord Byron, etc. Then coming to the Victorian period, 19th century Victorian period, we come across three different poets: Alfred, Lord Tennyson, Browning, who popularized the form dramatic monologue. Matthew Arnold, a different poet. So we find three important poets during the period. But there are some other important writers, important poets such as Elizabeth Browning. Then in 1850s period, in 1850s, we can see a shift. In 1858, we can find the establishment of Catholic brotherhood. So from the Victorian morality, we can find a shift, a paradigm shift to aesthetic movement. So we can find the influence of aestheticism, art for life's sake versus art for art's sake. So we can find a shift from Victorian morality to art for art's sake philosophy, aesthetic philosophy, and we have Dante Gabriel Rossetti, W.H. Hunt, William Morris, right? So pre-Raphaelite poetry. Then, towards the end of the 19th century, we have religious poetry. I have just given the angle of religious poetry for the sake of convenience. T.M. Hawkins, the winter. God is we all know that God is the main theme of Hawkins' poets. So Hawkins and Francis Thompson wrote Hound of Heaven. So Francis Thompson wrote Hound of Heaven. So Hawkins and Thompson can be clubbed together under the religious poetry. Then symbolist poetry, WBH, Philip by Sandy, for example. The Giants is simple, which he uses in the second coming. T.S. Eliot, obviously, so many symbols used in his poems in the wasteland. Imagist school of poetry. Imagism, very, very important moment in the early 20th century. Ezra Pound, in the station of a metro, very good example. William Carlos Williams' poem, The Red Wheelbarrow. The poem is like a picture. So much depends upon the red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. So, imagist poetry, Ezra Pound, T.H. Lawrence, the famous poem Snake by T.H. Lawrence, Ezra Pound, T.H. Lawrence, and William Carlos Williams. And coming to the early period of early decade of 20th century, we have war poetry. War poetry, we should be very clear about the two stages of war poetry. There, in the early phase, poets celebrated war, but in the second stage of war poetry, they wrote about, the pity of war. War was de-glorified towards the end. So we had poets such as Wilfred Owen, Rupert Brooke. Right? Then in 1930s period, we had writers who were categorized as Marxist poets or pink poets. They were also called Max Ponty. So some of the important writers: W.H. Auden, Stephen Spender, Cecil Day Louis MacNeice. So they all come together. They belong to pink poetry. So in 1940s period, so we have reached 1940s. So in 1940s period, we had neo-romantic poetry, a new romantic wave, thanks to poets such as William Thomas. Those who know the poem Friend Hill, William Thomas and neo-romantic poetry. Then towards the end of that 40s period, again, movement poetry, Philip Larkin, church going, Kingsley Amis, Elizabeth Jennings, Tom Gunn, John Wayne, Robert Conquest. It was Robert Conquest who edited that collection. Okay. Then, again, for the sake of convenience, we can categorize under school. We can name under school as animal poetry. So, animal poetry, Ted Hughes, Crow, who wrote the collection. Crow. Okay. Animal images. Then, there are other schools such as confessional poetry, Sylvia Plath and confessional poetry. Then you can name another school as confessional poetry. Free and frank treatment of life. That is a good example. Then when we come to contemporary poetry, we have so many important figures such as Edward Thomas, Kevin Hart, Geoffrey Hill, Andrew Motion, Carol Ann Duffy, and the present poet laureate, Simon Armitage. So Simon Armitage became the poet laureate in 2019. Before that, Carol Ann Duffy was the poet laureate. For the sake of knowledge, for your knowledge, John Byron is considered as the first poet laureate, first official poet laureate. John Byron. He became the poet laureate in 1668. Though we consider Ben Jonson as the unofficial poet laureate. Usually, John Byron is the poet laureate. So, see the pattern from early old English period. So we have seen the different schools and different poets. So we can keep it as a file, and we can keep a book for one form, and you can prepare notes based on this pattern. British prose and fiction. Actually, just read because we are running short of time. One, Old English prose, King Alfred, Anglo-Saxon chronicle. So Alfred compiled Anglo-Saxon chronicle. It was an year by year account of the important events of England. Then in the medieval period, we had some important writers such as Geoffrey Chaucer. Chaucer himself was a translator, and Chaucer's Tale of Melibea and the Parson's Tale were in prose, and Chaucer also translated so many works from French to English. So Chaucer was a prose writer, very important. Now John Wycliffe's translations of the Bible and pamphlets. So many pamphlets were written by Wycliffe and the Lollards. Right? Then we have another important name: William Caxton, Reginald Peacock, Hugh Latimer, John Fisher, and not to forget the name Sir Thomas Malory's Morty the Art. So Malory was also a very important prose writer. Authorized version of Bible was very, very important. The authorized version came out in 1611. And before that, we had another important, that's very, very important, such as because of so many factors such as nuclear holocaust, climate change, pandemic, etc. Mary Shelley's The Last War, for example. So Jack London's The Scarlet Plague, Saramago's Blindness. So many important post-apocalyptic novels. Original novels, we have the best example, Thomas Hardy, Wessex novels, Far from the Muddy Crowd. Utopian novels, dealing with the social, dealing with the social and political structures, ideal social and political structures. Utopian novel, Samuel Bud, Thomas More's Utopia. The opposite of utopian novel is dystopian novel, a novel which exposes the oppression of society, police state. George Orwell's 1984, Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, and another variety is Stream of Consciousness novel, also called Interior Monologue Technique. Is used in this category. James Joyce's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Virginia Woolf's Dorothy, Richest, they all wrote Stream of Consciousness novels. And regarding some of the key terms in the plot, novella, atmosphere, romance, fabulation, realism, naturalism. You will hear about some of the important themes. So before I conclude, just 1 minute. So I have listed. It's very important once you complete each and every form. For example, if you after you complete the section poetry, it is very important for you to write some essays based on a particular form. For example, if you study prose, Bacon, what's the contribution of Bacon in the field of prose? Okay. For example, another example: influence of the Bible on English literature. Influence of French Revolution on English literature. Features of Victorian poetry. Drama of ideas. What are the characteristics of war poetry? What are the features of Victorian prose? What is epic theatre? The elegy in English literature, etc. So it's very important for you to answer some questions based on different schools. I have listed some questions at the end. So the document, the PDF document, which I have already sent, includes all these things. You can make use of this structure. So I was just trying to give you a structure. I hope you're clear about what I discussed with you. How to approach. The approach has to be slightly modified. So that is the point. I was never trying to be analytical. I was just trying to give you a broad sketch, a broad outline of British literature, so that you will be in a better position to understand your different courses based on different needs. So thank you very much for your patient listening.
Thank you very much, Rajesh sir. We are deeply honored by your enlightening talk. I'm sure the student community would have found it very much useful. You have given a broad framework to work on, so I'm sure they will take it up. You have taken us on a voyage of British literature through the ages, from drama to poetry and then to prose. So thank you very much once again, sir. Now, I would like to invite Sanu of 3rd BA Communicative English to present the first part of the paper titled Theatre Through the Ages. Sanu?
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. Respected chair, dear co-panel, and the audience listening to my voice. I wish to thank the Department of English of this institution for giving me an opportunity to present a paper titled Theatre Through the Ages in this national webinar. So, I'll be dealing from the Greek theatre to Jacobian theatre. Greek theatre. The first time theatre truly freed itself from religious rituals to become an art form was in the Greece in the 6th century BCE, when the dithyramb was developed. This was a form of choral song chanted at the festival in honor of Dionysius, the god of wine, fruitfulness, and vegetation. Originally, it celebrated his rejuvenation of the earth. According to Greek tradition, the actor and playwright Thespis invited the drama when he augmented the chorus of the dithyramb with a single actor who wore masks to portray several different characters, with the possibility of dialogue between the actor and the chorus. More complex themes and modes of storytelling could be developed. The earliest surviving text of plays are 7 tragedies of Aeschylus dating from the first half of the 5th century BCE, adding a second actor and reducing the chorus from 50 to 12. Aeschylus laid the foundation for an aesthetics of drama that was to influence subsequent plays for well over 2,000 years. Tragedy, it was considered, should deal with illustrious figures and significant events. The plays, which were based on legends or remote history, were interpreted so as to convey some religious, moral, or political meaning. The entire cosmos was depicted in the drama, represented on a vertical set. Above was the seat of the god, below was the place of exile and punishment, and in middle was a flat circle of earth represented by the circular orchestra where the chorus performed. The conventions Aeschylus developed were refined by Sophocles, who brought the chorus up to 15 and added a third actor. More actor meant a large number of characters could be played. Euripides, in this turn, brought greater realism to characterization and strengthening the dramatic action by reducing the role of chorus. In time, the mask worn by the actors and the chorus became more expressive. Each character was instantly recognized upon entry. Comedy was represented competitively in Athens, though it fused much earlier tradition of popular entertainment, mime, and rivalry in honor of Dionysius. All comedy, of which Aristophanes was the chief exponent, was highly satirical. It was characterized by widely imaginative material. With the decline of tragedy after Euripides' death and defeat of Athens in 404 BCE, comedy increased in popularity. It began to evolve to the transitional middle comedy to the style known as new comedy. When we look into the setting up of the theater of Greek, the outdoor setting for performance of Greek drama traditionally comprised three areas: a large circular dancing floor on which the action took place, and in the center of which was an altar to Dionysius. Behind this, a scene building and dressing room, a low architectural facade to which painted scenery could be fitted. Around the orchestra, a semicircular auditorium cut into a hillside and fitted with wooden benches. The steep rack and layout of the auditorium enabled audience of about 10,000 to 20,000 to sit in. The next topic we are going to look upon is the medieval theater. Like Greek drama, English drama began as religious rituals in the medieval church, which was the center of education, art, and amusement. Plays were performed to render clearly the central doctrine of the church, so stories from the Bible and about the life of the saint came to be dramatically represented before large audience by the clergies. The place of performance was the interior of the church, and the language used was Latin, and usually these plays were performed during Easter time. However, when the plays became more elaborate and popular, the place of performance was moved from the church interior to the porch, churchyard, street, and even other public places. So naturally, Bible themes were replaced by secular ones, clergies were replaced by lay or common actors, and Latin was replaced by English as the language of the 5th century BCE, adding a second actor and reducing the chorus from 50 to 12. Aeschylus laid the foundation for an aesthetics of drama that was to influence subsequent plays for well over 2000 years. Tragedy, it was considered, should deal with illustrious figures and events. The plays, which were based on legends or remote history, were interpreted so as to convey some religious, moral, or political meaning. The entire cosmos was depicted in the drama, represented on a vertical set. Above was the seat of the god, below was the place of exile and punishment, and in middle was a flat circle of earth represented by the circular orchestra where the chorus performed. The conventions Aeschylus developed were refined by Sophocles, who brought the chorus up to 15 and added a third actor. More actor meant a large number of characters could be played. Euripides, in this turn, brought greater realism to characterization and strengthening the dramatic action by reducing the role of chorus. In time, the mass won by the actors and the chorus became more expressive. Each character was instantly recognized upon entry. Comedy was represented competitively in Athens, though it fused much earlier tradition of popular entertainment, mime, and rivalry in honor of Dionysius. All comedy, of which Aristophanes was the chief exponent, was highly satirical. It was characterized by widely imaginative material. With the decline of tragedy after Euripides' death and defeat of Athens in 404 BCE, comedy increased in popularity. It began to evolve to the transitional middle comedy to the style known as new comedy. When we look into the setting up of the theater of Greek, the outdoor setting for performance of Greek drama traditionally comprised three areas: a large circular dancing floor on which the action took place, and in the center of which was an altar to Dionysius. Behind this, a scene, building, and dressing room, a low architectural facade to which painted scenery could be fitted. Around the orchestra, a semicircular auditorium cut into a hillside and fitted with wooden benches. The steep rack and layout of the auditorium enabled audience of about 10,000 to 20,000 to sit in. The next topic we are going to look upon is the medieval theater. Like Greek drama, English drama began as religious rituals in the medieval church, which was the center of education, art, and amusement. Plays were performed to render clearly the central doctrine of the church, so stories from the Bible and about the life of the saint came to be dramatically represented before large audience by the clergies. The place of performance was the interior of the church, and the language used was Latin, and usually these plays were performed during Easter time. However, when the plays became more elaborate and popular, the place of performance was moved from the church interior to the porch, churchyard, street, and even other public places. So naturally, biblical themes were replaced by secular ones, clergies were replaced by lay or common actors, and Latin was replaced by English as the language of performance. When it completely moved out of the church, clergies grew suspicious regarding its biblical element, and so there was a revival of the Corpus Christi festival in 1311, which provided a public holiday every year to perform the dramatic performance which represented the stories and themes from the Bible were called mystery plays, whereas play which dramatized the life of saints and divine were called miracle plays began the 12th century when a play was performed at the Dunstable in 1110. Mystery plays handled the stories from the Bible were performed during Easter and in association with the Corpus Christi festival. These plays were later secularized in the hands of trade guilds, who owned a mobile wagon which could be moved from place to stage performance. There were four cycles of mystery plays: York with 48 plays, Chester with 25 plays, Wakefield with 32 plays, and Coventry with 42 plays. In the miracle and mystery plays, the series of comic elements were interwoven by the end of the 14th century. They got split into the morality and the interludes. The morality plays were allegorical representation of the human life, which personification of abstract virtues and vices such as sin, goodness, bad angels, grace, foolishness, and honesty. These plays were dedicated in nature and often represented the progress of a character from the cradle to the grave, and sometimes even beyond it. The Castle of Perseverance is a complete morality play in which life is depicted as a struggle between virtue and vice. In Every Man, which is the most popular morality play, the protagonist named Every Man takes a journey of life in which the other characters are personification of abstract qualities such as good deeds, fellowship, etc. Other examples of morality plays are Mankind, Wisdom, etc. However, the real beginning of drama began in the late 16th and the early 17th century. English drama during this period was under the influence of classical drama, while Seneca influenced English tragedies, Terence and Plautus influenced English comedies. These influence can be seen in Nicholas Udall's Ralph Royster Doyster, which is the first regular English comedy. The comedies were noted for their mixed verse, prose, songs, and humor. Seneca's influence is seen in Gorberak, also titled Ferex and Porrex, which was written by Thomas Sackville and Thomas Norton. Like Thomas Kyd, the Spanish tragedy, Gorberak is a revenge tragedy set in fads with long rhetorical speeches, bloody plots, horrible crimes, and ghosts. Thus, all these regular plays served as a prelude to Shakespeare's excellent dramatic contribution. Next, we are looking to the topic, the Elizabethan Theater. In the first half of the 16th century, there were no permanent theatres. Plays were performed at inns, public halls, courtyards, noblemen's houses, and other open spaces by traveling group of actors. The actor's profession was not recognized by law, and hence were here of Queen's men, the Lord Admiral's men, or the Lord Chamberlain's men. The first permanent theatre, known as the Theatre, was built in 1576 by James Burbage, was followed by theatres like the Rose in 1587, the Globe in 1599, and 1660. These theatres within the city was a Blackfriars. There were two kinds of theatres: the private theatre, which were roofed, artificially lighted, and attended by higher class people. The public theatre was small round or hexagonal structure made of wood and open to the sky. Only the stage and the three galleries where fashionable respected spectators sat in the boxes were roofed. The stage was a raised narrow platform jutting far into the pit. The pit was occupied by the common people who were called the groundlings. The Elizabethan stage was divided into four parts. The stage, called apron stage, was used for open air scenes where street fights and battles took place. In the floor was a hidden trap door through which ghosts and witches entered in the stage when needed. The backstage was behind the pillars and it was used for scenes as in a room, office, or palace. At both ends of the wall, there were doors for exit and entry of characters. Between the doors, there was a third door which opened into a smaller inner rare stage that was used to represent bedchamber, caves, or tombs. Over this was a gallery that was used to represent city walls, upper windows, and other high place. The flag was put in the turret to indicate that a play was about to begin or was already in progress. There were certain drawbacks in Elizabethan theatre. Elizabethan drama did not have women actors. Their roles were done by trained boys. There were no curtains or sceneries. So a change of scene was indicated by placards. Also, there was no lighting. Hence, plays usually took place in the daytime, probably at 3 in the afternoon and lasted for 2 hours. However, in spite of all these limitations, the Elizabethan age marked an important stage in the development of English drama. Shakespeare also made best use of it, and his plays catered to the needs of the Elizabethan audience, who were highly superstitious and strongly believed in ghosts and witches. The next topic we are looking is Jacobian theatre. Jacobean age was a period of visual and literary arts during the reign of James I of England. The distinction between the early Jacobean and the preceding Elizabethan styles are subtle one, for although the dynasty changed, there were no distinct stylistic transition. Too many themes and patterns were carried over from the preceding Elizabethan era, though rich Jacobean literature is often darkly questioning. William Shakespeare's greatest tragedies were written between about 1601 and 1607. Other Jacobean dramatic writers became preoccupied with the problems of evil. The plays of John Webster, John Marston, Thomas Malton, and George Chapman induced all the terror of tragedies, but little of its pity. Comedy was best represented in the acid satire of Ben Jonson. Another feature of drama and this time, however, was the development of the extravagant courtly entertainment known as much reached the literary peak in the works of Jonson. Johnson Theatre flourished in the hands of the playwright of the period. They used variant genres to catch the interest of the audience. City life, political themes, corrupt society, and to harsh satire led by Ben Jonson. Seating arrangement for audience was built around an open space, the satin rows which faced the stage. Kingman's was a famous
Introduction to the British theatre down the ages. Now, I invite Nahithya of 3rd BA Communicative English to present the second part of the paper titled Theatre Through the Ages. Nahithya?
Respected Chair, dear co-panelists, and the audience listening to my voice, good afternoon to one and all present over here. At the outset, I wish to thank the Department of English of this institution for giving me an opportunity to present a paper titled Theatre Through the Ages in this national webinar. Before we begin with the topic, let's take a short glance on previous theatres. The first recorded theatrical performance were in ancient Greek during a festival that honored the god Dionysius. During medieval times, people lived their lives according to religion and thought that entertainment was a sin. Theaters started putting on their own plays that was about religion so that they could be performed in church. These plays became so popular that they had to move them out of churches and into the cities. During Renaissance, people became interested in art and performances were done using props the actors had with them. Though art was accepted during the time, theatre was still thought of as lowly. However, Queen Elizabeth was a big fan of theatre, which helped it become popular It was during the time period that Shakespeare became famous and wrote the poem and we still read and perform today. Before we begin with the topic, let us take a short glance on the theater through the ages. As we know that theater is a collaborative form of performing art which uses live performers to present the experience of a real or imagined event before a live audience. We shall begin with the topic Restoration Theater. The term restoration refers to the return of monarchy to England. The relation between the court and theatre were close legally, financially, and politically. The year between 1642 and 1660 saw little theatrical activity in England. Puritan authorities repeatedly endeavoured to banish public performances of plays. From September 2, 1642, the stage plays were banned, and a law was passed that suspended performances for 5 years. After the law got expired, Oliver Cromwell's government passed another law declaring that all actors were to be considered rogue. With the start of Restoration, the theatre and its presence with the public began to flourish, and it became a way to celebrate the end of Puritan rule. The Restoration stage was a proscenium theatre with a deep forestage or apron. Entrance exits were made on either sides of the apron, three proscenium doors on each side, but two have been more usual, and a curtain hung was raised and not dropped until the epilogue. Seats were distributed between pit, boxes, and galleries. Admission price varied according to the nature of performance. Cheaper seats were in two galleries. Many scenic innovations developed, and the new theatre were fully enclosed. Right after 1660, the theatre was under control of businessmen. Actors were hired for a stated period. With the advent of Restoration, women began to make an appearance in theatre. This has brought with it a variety of changes to the theatre. Restoration theatre audience were homogeneous and mostly members of elite class. Restoration theatre is noted for the comedy of manners. It would deal with or codes of behavior of the higher classes. Certain characteristics of comedy of manners are witty dialogues, sophisticated vocabulary, cleverly constructed sceneries, miscommunication, marriage was a frequent subject, rapid twists in events, etc. John Dryden is considered the greatest playwright of the Restoration period, followed by William Congreve, George Farquhar, etc. In this period, Bunyan published Pilgrim's Progress, Milton published Paradise Lost. Next, 19th century theatre. At the beginning of the 19th century, there were only two main theatres in London. It has attracted huge number of people and led to the increase in number of spectators, and types of entertainment resulted in the construction of more playhouses. With better rail transportation, dramatic arts were also brought to new areas and audiences. The 19th century passion for theatre is clearly seen. Therefore, it was a true popular entertainment. Characteristics of 19th century theatre are gas lighting was introduced in London's Drury Lane Theatre. Melodrama was created. Color drama, music was used to increase emotions or to signify characters. Actors performed their characters or demonstrated the characters using gestures and body poses. Many special effects were a part of the performance. During the first half of the century, playwrights were poorly paid, and three incredible playwrights changed the theatre. Their work began the movement of realism. These amazing playwrights were Henrik Ibsen, George Bernard Shaw, Anton Chekhov, etc. In the second half of the 19th century, challenged actors to learn a new method of acting. Next comes the 20th century theatre. By 20th century, many playwrights simply wanted to reject everything that had come before. It allowed playwrights to innovate and bring ideas together in new and unexpected ways. For most of the 20th century theatre, realism has been the mainstream. Realism began as an experiment to make theatre more useful to society. It was a reaction to the Jacobian movement and the Elizabethan Theater. Realism. Realism focuses on the attempt to represent subject matter truthfully, without artificiality, and avoiding artistic conventions or supernatural elements. Influenced by the ideas of Sigmund Freud, Charles Darwin, and others, many artists began to find a psychological approach to theatre. Characteristics of 20th century theatre are Bertolt Brecht wrote his initial dramas during the 1920s. He was hardly known till then, but his theories of stage presentation sharply imitated the theatre. He was the one who adopted alienation effect to keep the spectator aware that an enactment is going in theatre and not the reality. Martin Esslin, an author and a critic, assigned the term the theatre of absurd. This was borrowed from the essay The Myth of Sisyphus, written by Albert Camus. Theatre of absurd represent the absurdity, meaningless of human existence. Epic theatre made frequent use of unfamiliar setting, the interruption of action and dialogue. During the 20th century, the world changed forever. Many other theatre movements also began. One such theatre style was theatre of absurd. This style of theatre grew out of Europe in late 1940s. Two themes seem to stand out with regard to 20th century drama. That was for all and female dramatists. Lastly, 21st century theatre. Technology changes have changed many of the different methods we use to convey artistic styles and themes. Today's theatre has many contrasting and diverse styles. The theatre today is wild, intriguing, captivating, comforting, and reassuring experience with full of paradoxes. The theatre has really changed in 21st century. The things that got changes are audience. In modern theatre, as we audience, we watch the actors speak and address each other. Previously, actors addressed mainly the audience. Seating arrangement was very different. Changes in art and entertainment also took place. Digital age challenge. Well, through internet, people can access such plays. This is actually a big challenge to the theatre industry to attract more people. Modern theatre have enhanced features such as microphones, music, and sound effects. Audience participation is very common. Live performances versus recorded performances. In modern times, if we miss a play in theatre, we can easily catch up on the recorded version. Theatre design and technological changes on stage and performance. The use of high technological recording and projection equipment has made it possible for the production of better plays and improved the general performance of actors as well. Too much rehearsal and performance for a long period before they go live. Young playwrights, actors, directors are getting the chance to throw their diverse voices into the mix. There is one thing that hasn't changed. The theatre is still a place where everyone can come together, no matter who they are. Theatre has a very strong place in our society because of its culture and history. As theatre became more popular, they became one of the main forms of entertainment, even during the Great Depression. I hope the paper would draw new insights to the patient listeners. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. That was indeed an excellent presentation. I'm sure that those attending this webinar would have got a bird's eye view on theatre. Thank you. I invite Gayatri of First BA Communicative English to present her paper on romanticism. Gayatri.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon. I shall be humbled to welcome all the dignitaries who are watching and hearing the national webinar through the new media in this new fine year. I wish all a happy and prosperous new year. I wish to thank the Department of English, Iqbal College, for giving me this opportunity to present a paper titled Romantic Age and the Romantic Poets in the online webinar, British Literature Through the Ages. As you all know, the topic is extremely important. Now moving on to my paper. I hope I had introduced my title, which is titled as Romantic Age and the Romantic Poet. Romanticism was an artistic, literary, musical, and intellectual movement originated in Europe towards the end of the 18th century. It is rooted in the German Sturm and Drang movement between 1760s and 80s in the German literature and music, which strong individual subjectivity. And it was characterized by its emphasis on emotion and individualism, as well as glorification of all the past and nature, referring the middle rather than classical. Romantic period in England began in the latter half of the reign of George III and ended with the accession of Queen Victoria. This age is also called the Age of Revolution because this age witnessed social and economic revolutions as well as revolution in literature. This period saw the triumph of Romanticism in literature and democracy in government. The term Romantic Revival is applied to the splendid outburst of literature in the age of Wordsworth. The word revival indicates a return to literature of those romantic qualities which had characterized the literature of the Elizabethan age. Romanticism of Elizabethan age was the expression of that imaginative life which have been stimulated by the Renaissance. Unbridled imagination, the glow of passion and emotion, the joy of freedom, and the power of mind are the characteristic of Elizabethan literature. And it was in the poetry of Spenser, plays of Marlowe and Shakespeare, and the prose of Bay Holiday found their supreme expression. The Romantics brought intellect into poetic imagination. The neoclassical poets served reason, intellect, and order and looked outward to society, while the Romantic counterparts turned to the inner recesses of mind and imagination. In place of the balance and symmetry of heroic couplet, the Romantic dealt with individual experience in language close to everyday speech. When the Augustan writers were inspired by the method of classical ancient literature of Greek and Rome, the Elizabethans were inspired by its substance. Romantic movement was a natural revolt against the classical spirit of the 18th century. Signs of rebellion were seen in the poems of James Thomson, William Collins, Thomas Gray, William Blake, and Robert Burns, and these poets were called as the transitional poets. This movement got a definite shape and direction with the publication of lyrical ballads written by William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, published in 1798. It is a landmark in the history of English literature with 4 poems written by Coleridge and 19 by Wordsworth. Whole spirit of the work is reflected in 2 poems of this memorable work, that is Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Coleridge, which was actually his masterpiece, and Lines Written a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey by Wordsworth. Romanticism manifested a new delight in simplicity of themes, feelings, and expression. It also gave primacy to the worship of nature and the lives of humble men and women. At the same time, the writers of the Romantic period fascinated by the supernatural and also by the legends of the Middle Ages. This fascination for the strange and uncommon led to the revival of ballad form. Chief characteristic of the Romantic age include individualism or reaction against rules and customs. That is, individual's right to express his thoughts in his own way. Romantic spirit seeks the strange and mysterious and reveals the wonder of things removed from real life. They sought to get away from the pressure of present reality and look to the past. They discovered a new beauty, love, and wondered in the world of nature and expressed in poetry and their emotional reactions to her beauty and magic. They dealt with the lives of the common people. Great Romantic poets found inspiration in simplicities of everyday life, that is, an ordinary sunset, a walk over the hills, the song of a nightingale, etc. The cardinal characteristic of Romanticism is the freedom of imagination. According to Rickett, Romanticism induces a speculative and inquisitive turn of mind. Romantics were concerned not so much with the external facts of life as with their own feelings and emotions. Poetry to them was a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. It is the poet's own emotions that find expression in the poetry. Spenserian stanza, ballad form, blank verse, lyric, ode, and the sonnet were all revived. French Revolution began in 1789, plays an important role in shaping the Romantic poetry of England. First phase of the revolution was ideological, which was dominated by the philosophers like Rousseau, Voltaire, and Montesquieu. Second phase of the revolution began in 1789 with the fall of the Bastille prison, a hated prison, a symbol of tyranny and oppression. It signified the end of the old order of suppression and the birth of a new order based on the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Third phase or the military phase of Napoleon was an age of disillusion and despair. English poetry was closely associated with the various stages of revolution. Rousseau influenced Wordsworth, Satie, Coleridge, and Shelley. Third phase horrified Wordsworth and Coleridge, but Byron was fascinated by the events at this time. Teachings of Rousseau and the principles of French Revolution powerfully influenced the Romantic poets in their general appeal to instinct and sentiment. Rousseau's primitivism, individualism, and romantic imagination found an echo in the poetry of Blake, Wordsworth, and Coleridge. Primitivism means it is the belief that the beginning of the world, like that of individual life, is much better than the later stages of life. Poetry of early revolutionary period differs from that of the late revolutionary period. Thus, the Romantic poets were grouped into two. The older group or the first generation, which includes William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and Robert Satie. These three are grouped together as the late poets. Because Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Satie sometime or the other lived in the Lake District of the Northwest England, hence they are referred to as the Lake Poets. The second generation or the younger group include Lord Byron, P.B. Shelley, and John Keats. Now to William Wordsworth. Wordsworth brought a completely new approach to writing of English poetry. His objections to an over-stylized poetic diction, attitude to nature, choice of language, choice of simple incidents as a subject for poetry are just minor aspects of this revolutionary achievement. In this famous preface to the second edition of Lyrical Ballads, published in 1800, Wordsworth states his conception of poetic art as the breadth and finer spirit of all knowledge, and of poetry as the outcome of the spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions recollected in tranquility. His first poem, An Evening Walk, published in 1793, shows the influence of French poets. His descriptive sketches, published in 1793, is a travel poem dealing with his Alpine tour of 1790. The Lyrical Ballads, published in 1798, brought out the noblest and most significant poem of Wordsworth, that is, lines written a few miles above Tintenham. This collection also includes poems like The Idiot Boy, The Thorn, Simon Lee, The Complaint of a Forsaken Indian Woman, Expostulation and Reply, lines written in Early Spring, etc. His finest works were written between 1798 to 1808, which includes Michael, The Old Cumberland Beggar, Strange Fits, Passion, and Nothing. The visuals in emotion, memories, moral ideas, benedictory attitude towards his sister Dorothy are bound up with one another in his autobiographical poem titled The Prelude, which was published posthumously in 1850. The Solitary Reaper, The Excursion, Ode on the Intimations of Immorality are his other poems. He was poet laureate in 1843 after the death of Satie. He had written a few sonnets like Milton, The World is Too Much with Us, Westminster, etc. Only drama is titled The Borderers. Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He was a man of gigantic genius, but his addiction to opium paralyzed the very center of Coleridge's imagination lies the faculty of evoking mystery of things. The rhyme of the ancient mariner and Kublai Khan are the finest example for this natural. His love for nature, which conceived as a living God, and each of her forms, the flower or the river or the mountains, informed by a distinct spirit, had a distinct life of its own, is the basis of ancient mariner. The poet passes to the second phase of the conception of nature when he conceives that it is our own thought that makes nature to us, which he beautifully expressed in Alien Harp and the Ode to Dejection. Dejection and Ode was written addressing Wordsworth's sister-in-law Sarah Hutchinson. His disillusionment with the French Revolution are expressed in Ode on the Departing Year and Stanza Ode, which was originally entitled as Recantation. Biographia Literaria, published in 1817, is Coleridge's most valuable prose work. He divides imagination into two as the primary imagination and secondary imagination. Primary imagination enables us to perceive and make learned for 30 years from 1813 to 1843. He was involved with Coleridge in the utopian scheme of aristocracy. He was written a narrative oriental verse romance titled The Joan of Arc. to the younger generation of Romantic poets, Lord Byron. His greatest and most important contribution to the English Romantic poem is the addiction of passion or tons of passionate feelings. He published his first collection of poems, Hours of Idleness, in 1807, which was ferociously attacked by Edinburgh Review. His first great literary triumph came with the publication of The Child Harold's Pilgrimage, a fictionalized account of the trip to Mediterranean. His life and works inspired by the concept of Byron, a hero, a melancholic young man brooding on some mysterious, unforgivable sin of his past. In his vision of judgment, he ridiculed upon the spent forces of the ancient feudalism and monarchy. His narrative poems include The Sage of Corinth, Parisinia, Manfred, etc. His another romances include The Curse of Minerva, The Waltz, The Gayova, To Thaisa, She Walks in Beauty, etc. His satire, especially Beppo and Don Juan, scintillated with humor. His masterpiece is the unfinished poem Don Juan, which he used as a platform to express many of his sardonic opinions of people and events. P.B. Shelley. He was a revolutionary ideologist, a great prophet of faith and hope, and he was also a transcendentalist. Watchwords of the French Revolution, liberty, equality, and fraternity guided him in his rebellion against institutions of marriage, family, church, and also against tyranny and unjust laws. Being an atheist and writing the pamphlet titled The Necessity of Atheism, Shelley was expelled from the Oxford University. His first major poem, Hugh in Mob, published in 1813, attacks religion and moral codes. Aleister, or the Spirit of Solitude, depicts the tragedy of an young idealist who seeks the ideal of beauty in real life. The Revolt of Islam is a passionate plea for freedom. Julian and Metallo records Shelley's impression of Venice and the great poet Lord Byron. Lines written about the Euganian shows Shelley's characteristic combination of the elegiac and the apocalyptic. Prometheus and Boundaries is lyrical drama, and Sensi is a verse drama. The Witch of Atlas, published in 1820, is the lightest and the most delicate of Shelley's fantasies. Shelley's poetic genius excels in the lyrical pieces like The Skylark, The Cloud, Ode to the West Wind, Ode to Liberty, etc. John Keats. A thing of beauty is a joy forever, and this is the first lines of his poem, Endymion. This is the theory that Keats followed all through his life, and he was a poet of fences. Imitation of Spenser, published in 18, is one of the earliest works which consists of few Spenserian stanzas. His two poems, titled I Stood Tiptoe Upon a Hill and Sleep and Beauty, show the influences of Spenser and Leigh Hunt. A famous sonnet on first looking into Chapman's Homer reveals his wonder at the newfound world of Hellenism. Isabella, or the Port of Basel, published in 1818, is based on Boccaccio's Decameron and tells a tragic story of love. Lamia is the story of a serpent woman taken from Burton's The Anatomy of Melancholy. Keats' greatest odes include To a Nightingale, to Psyche, Ode to Melancholy, to Autumn, on Indolence, etc. Other Romantic poets include Leigh Hunt, Thomas More, Thomas Campbell, Thomas Hood, and Samuel Joggers. The third leads of the fragmented flowers ends, but Romanticism tried to romanticize the history through the historization of the Romantics. Let us hope that the fragments of Romanticism bliss and bloom the globe. Thank you.
Thank you, Gayatri, for your excellent presentation on Romanticism. Rajesh sir, can you hear me? Rajesh sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Yes, sir. Would you like to comment on the presentations?
Yeah, definitely. There is no point adding. Actually, I was really happy to take part in the. I'm sure that, including my lecture, apart from the three lectures, three presentations by students, I think this will set a platform students to work platform, so that they can improve their knowledge of English literature. They will be more empowered to further explore the avenues of literature with more and more confidence. The three presentations were really very crisp, detailed, including all the minute details. They tried their level best. Congratulations to all the three students who presented. And I'm happy that all these participants they were benefited by the presentations. And I'm really happy. Once again, I tell you, I'm really happy to take part in this webinar. Was a resource person. I'm sure that students have really benefited from it. I thank organizers for giving me the opportunity, especially my good old student here. And I really appreciate the effort of college organizing a webinar on a different area. Unlike, webinars are clearly pointed out at the beginning. Most of the webinars are based on the technical topics, like methodology, theories, various theoretical approaches. So in that sense, it was a welcome break for me as well. I should thank you again for that. Welcome break from cultural studies and historical studies, and of course research methodology. I remember giving at least 4 research methodology during this lockdown. So it was an enriching experience for me as well. It was useful for me in the sense that I could revise what I have learned over the years. So I request all the participants to see whether this new approach will help you or not. So I wish you all the best. Once again, congratulate the authorities, the members of the English department for giving opportunities for the students also. I should highly appreciate. I should add that the students were given space to show their expertise in presentations, and all the three of them did exceedingly well. So congratulations to the students. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for spending your valuable time with us. We've come to the end of the national webinar on British literature through the ages, organized by the Department of English, Iqbal College, Peringamala. I once again thank all the participants and all those who have come and graced this webinar and made it a grand success. Thank you very much.
Thank you.